Here. Approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions? Okay, now I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Make the motion to approve the agenda as is. A second.
We'll call the vote. Weber?
Yes.
Stickle?
Yes.
Kimball?
Yes.
Cusack?
Yes.
Bunyan?
Yes.
Cardinal?
Yes.
Wheeler?
Yes. Public comment, you'll notice on the agenda there is only one public comment section tonight. I had asked for, if you have spoken twice about anything, that you not speak again on the same thing. I have two requests here. If there's anybody else that wants to speak that hasn't spoken, then we need to have a written request from you. And you can do that while these other two people are speaking. Good? Okay, the first one is Vicki Cox. Fox, I'm sorry. Yes.
I just wanted to, I've tried to stay uninvolved about what's been going on with the schools, even though I have children in each one of the schools. And part of the reason we're doing that is because I'm a community action agency worker. I'm in charge of a local clothes charity that we have for the poor in Lakin. And I felt like my time was better dedicated to focusing on the services for those people. But I came tonight because I have a child who went from kindergarten all the way, he's a senior now at the high school. And some of the things that have gone on in the schools have really weighed on my mind. But because I have so many children and I'm working two jobs and I'm taking care of people in the community for other things, I haven't been able to come in and give my opinion on what's been going on with the schools. So I think from that perspective, when we're talking about the changes with the schools and what's going on with the Lakin Grade School, I think a lot of the poor people in the community are saying to themselves when they walk into the school is in better condition than my house. Why do they need all this money to fix up the school? And I fortunately have a teacher that's a good friend of my family that can explain to me, well, the state requires this and this and this and this and this of our school district to provide for the students, and they're telling us that we're not providing it, that's why we need this money to fix up the school. But I think when you're talking about these referendums and how much money you need to pass in the community, that you need to make it clear what that money is going for. Because when people are working 60 hours a week just to put food on their table and you say, we need $4 million, they're like, what on earth do they need $4 million for? You know, I've looked at some of the plans. I've read the stuff when you've given the choices. I just think that if we're talking about spending all this money to go towards the schools, you need to give the people an idea of what they're paying for. And that's really all I have to say on the topic.
The other request is from Bill Riddell.
Thank you. I am Bill Riddell, local farmer. Members of the board, community, and friends. It disturbs me that some say the building issue is part of an ongoing feud between Sparland and Mid-County. After nearly 20 years of consolidation together, I think we're probably as united as we're ever going to be until there's no one left that remembers the two districts. The members of the Midland School District have twice asked you to eliminate one site center. I think that is the issue. Rather than the location issue, I think it's a site center issue. people who elected you to oversee the education of our children and grandchildren in a fiscally responsible manner. I feel it's an operational efficiency issue to be able to stop traveling teachers. Our students need them in the classroom. Eliminating a site center should reduce other operational overhead, as well as provide some office efficiencies. The Dunlap school offices are off-premise, and perhaps that even should be considered here. An empty building in Lakin would be much cheaper, I think, to renovate and remodel than building new office space at the cost per square foot they talk about. Doing so would allow the present offices to be converted back into classrooms. Again, a possible savings of construction. As for the busing issue, all students are currently being bused at some time in their Midland educational experience. Because of these site center, classroom instruction must stop as the first buses need to leave for another site center. Those that say Lakin's survival depends on a school in town are mistaken. Their survival of any area, small town, depends on you and me, citizens, patronizing the local businesses. Every time we go to Walmart, Menards, Kroger's, we are contributing to the death of the small town. There's a need in the community for plumbers, electricians, carpenters, and other trade businesses. While computers and electronics are all well and good, I feel we need a part of the high school curriculum to include classes on small business establishment and operation. Our small town must get the younger generation taught to own and operate a small business, and above all, to put forth the work ethic it takes to be successful. In response to Mr. Weber's comments about the people's money and giving them a chance to vote, this has been done not only once, but twice. We've told you we want 2 site centers. I thank you for your time and serious consideration on 2 site centers in the Midland School District. Thank you.
I received one other request to address the Board of Education by Mr. Bill Scott.
A long time ago, there was an election, presidential election. A Democrat won. 4 years later, there was another election. A Democrat won. 4 years later, there was another election, presidential election. A Democrat won. 4 years later, they said, why have an election? Let's just, people want Democrats, let's just automatically have a Democrat. Yes, we have had referendums. And the people have said no, and no. This is a different referendum we're asking you to have. It's a different election. Let us vote for that election. This is a different referendum. Let us speak again. Let the people say no. Let the people say yes. Give us that opportunity. Also, I've heard the word adequate thrown around. We can have an adequate education. I don't want an adequate anything for my daughter, for my wife. Don't give me an adequate education. Yes, we can get an adequate education in 2 buildings, 2 sites. I don't want that. It's a fact that there were, I don't know, 400 people here however many years ago. That's good. But now, education is different. That classroom that had 25 kids in it however many years ago, that's great. But now, 25 kids in that same classroom, it doesn't work. There's discipline problems. Kids are different nowadays. So, lastly, I was not here. Mid-County, you built a new high school out there. I'm sure, I'm just guessing that the architect came along, and at that time, the open space design with no walls, that was in vogue. And I just believe that the architect convinced the Board of Education this is good. I don't think the teachers were probably asked. Because what happened later, we put in walls. So please, whatever you do, please ask for the teachers' input. We are experts, we know what is good, so please ask for our input too. Finally, just let me say again, I'd like to have an election. I'd like to have an election so I can say yes, or other people can say no. Thanks.
All right. Is there anyone else? All right. We'll close public comment and move on to discussion regarding the building configuration proposals, including possible construction options within the Midland School District. I'm sorry. Did you fill something out?
No, I just walked in. I'm a mother of three. I'm sorry I'm late.
Yes.
My name is Bridget Gabbert. I spoke with most of you at the VFW the last time we met. I'm probably the newest citizen of Lincoln. I have 3 children. I am not a country girl. I am a city girl. I lived most of my life in Hollywood, California, New York City. I have 3 children, and my husband and I decided to make a lifestyle change, and we chose Lincoln because of the school. I cannot stress to you enough the education that your children are getting at the elementary school. Figures don't lie, and we looked up the figures for the elementary school. They are fantastic. I lived in Peoria Heights for a couple of years. The school is nowhere near what you guys have here. My 2nd grade daughter has 13 kids in a classroom. In New York City, you pay outstanding money to have that kind of education, I'm telling you. Please keep that in mind. After we're all done and gone, the class of, what will it be, 2023, something like that, they're going to get their diplomas and leave here, and this town will be gone. Because there's no point in having a lifestyle like we have here if we don't keep it the way that it is. You want to put 13 children in a classroom, in a big classroom, you're robbing your kids of an education. I'm telling you, I've lived it. Please consider the education, if nothing else, the education that your kids are getting in a smaller classroom. We moved here in the end of July, and the #1 thing that we considered was a school. It's right down the street from my house. I feel safe here. I like it in Lincoln. I don't have to worry about the things that I've worried my whole life about. Ship your kids off somewhere else? Who knows? Who knows? You read the news today, you see what's on the news. Do you want to worry about that? I don't worry about that here. I don't worry about it. My daughter is in 5th grade here. I have a 2nd grader. I don't worry about those kind of things. Preserve that. I'm telling you, the small amount of money that it will cost will be worth it in the end. And that's all I have to say. Please consider it. Thank you.
All right, we are moving on. Number 5, to discuss a discussion regarding the building configuration proposals, including possible construction options within the Midland School District. And open the floor for discussions.
Before we start the discussion, Mrs. Wheeler, I'd like to make a statement. Sure. I'm going to read it just so that I don't come off topic. So, in April of this year, a referendum to build a school outside of Lakin was voted down. It was clear that the taxpayers within the district were not in support of this endeavor. The vote was an overwhelming no. After the failed referendum, the school board started down a path of trying to come up with options that were within our financial means and that met the requirements for providing a learning environment for our children. 2 viable options were born, along with 4 other options that would require additional funding. The issue of closing the Lakin School has been looming around since before 2010. You can refer to articles written in the Peoria Journal-Star for actions being taken at that time to halt the closure of the Lakin School. Yet here we are 5 years later, and the issue is still looming. How many board meetings have been dedicated to this subject of the elementary school, and how many tax dollars have been spent trying to find a solution to keep the school in Lakin, and yet we're still at an impasse? First, everyone gets to state their opinion pretty freely, but as a board member, I'm not always allowed to do so. I want this board to know that I'm very dedicated to the curriculum and the offerings that are being taught within our district. We should be focusing on the curriculum we are prescribing and how it is or is not preparing our students for their next steps. We should be looking at what we're prescribing as offerings for our students at the junior high and the senior high levels. We should be investing in our programs and in our staff. Because at the end of the day, how do we measure if our students are successful? It isn't with test scores or grades. It is what they do when they leave the halls of Midland and enter into the world. It is the opportunities that the kids have now, the skills that they acquire, and the experiences they gain that help mold them into what they become as adults, and ultimately, what they give back to their communities as citizens, teachers, and parents of tomorrow. I agree option 5 and 6 are not perfect, and I can honestly say that I'm personally not crazy about my own child being sent out to the high school. However, she does have 3 older step-siblings, and if you think bullying is bad, you should try blending a family of dynamic backgrounds, bullying, and the bullying you deal with amongst siblings. But I'm looking at this as a chance for her and all the other children possibly relocating to the high school as a chance to take an ag class, computer class, a foreign language, algebra, and for us to truly capitalize on the offerings that all of our kids can have in the district by having our staff in closer proximity and sharing their best practices with each other. I'm not sold on either of these options. Just know that. I just know that as a person, I have to live within my means, and our voters have clearly told us to do just that in this last referendum. They told us to find a solution to live within our means. The state of Illinois has put all school districts at risk for funding not only education that your child receives, but for funding the pensions that your teachers contribute to and all rely upon to retire on. In closing, tonight we are asked to consider building a grade school opposite where it sits now. There aren't any hard costs for this project, timelines of implementation, the impact to the taxpayers, costs of the referendum, consequences of a failed referendum, conceptual drawings or configurations of a new building decided upon by this board. And while I've heard the city has voted to sell or give the land at least to the district, I have not seen a change in that property occur. We are all going into this blind. How can we weigh the cost of option 6 against the cost of a new building when we really haven't discussed what that would look like? Not one meeting since the last referendum failed has the school board discussed building a new elementary school in Lakin. We haven't asked our architect to create any plans, provide us with a cost analysis, or ultimately provide us with what the bottom line is for our taxpayers. What is it costing them? A referendum, a new school, and a tax levy. We all know our taxes are going up, but how much? How can people afford to pay all the levying going on by all the governing bodies when they aren't getting raises at work to cover the taxes? It is time for this board to take action in implementing a solution, not repackaging the same idea for the last several years over and over and over again, and then one day that the hopes of the district voters will start saying yes. The children in this district do not need a new building to lead them to success. They need a stronger curriculum, more diversified offerings, and a dynamic staff that will put the building blocks of education in front of them to help them climb to achieve their dreams. A building is a place you go. It's geography. My grandmother taught for years at the Old Soldiers and Sailors Orphanage in Bloomington, Illinois, and taught at ISU. The buildings for both those facilities were different as night and day, but from her educational journey, she helped produce teachers, lots and lots of teachers. And the common factor that they all had was her. It wasn't the technology, it wasn't the latest model of the desk or the best textbook around. It was her teaching that made the kids write, and they discovered themselves, their talents, and what they liked and what they didn't like. It was a teacher, not the building, that made the difference in the education. I cannot in good conscience vote in support of adding or requesting for the concerned citizens of Lakin to add this group to the referendum. This option has not been fully explored by the board. We do not have anything to support this, as this is the best option for the district. It's only an option. I urge my fellow board members to consider your oaths and the directive you were given in the last election, where this very item, the grade school, being placed on the ballot, and like we are being asked now, it has flaws, just like option 5 and 6 do. We should be implementing a solution and concentrating on what is truly best for the kids, and that is improving the curriculum and providing for our staff. I want to thank you all, and I want to thank everyone who's here tonight. It's amazing, and I just want to thank you for your concern and your commitments, but I truly do believe that the changes need to start in the curriculum first. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you for giving me that option.
I think I can address a couple of the things that you brought up today, and since they just happened within like the last 24 hours, 48 hours, first of all, each board member has been provided with a resolution authorizing the transfer of property from the city of Lakin to Midland Community Unit District number 7. And it is referring to the property that is west of the school, the playground area. And this is effective as of yesterday, and the city council passed it. So if we were to go to referendum, the first things that we would want to do is get this transfer taken care of. So it's there. All right, so we know that if we were to build a school, that property is available to us. All right, so that's been taken care of. So it's just a matter of
transfer, that's just the only cost associated with that would be any legal fees, deeds, transfers, that sort of stuff.
yes,
Okay.
yes, actually swapping them. So that would, our lawyers, of course, would have to work that out, but it's there. We can have that. Right. Another thing, I didn't know that talking to lawyers was going to be part of my responsibility being on this board. I spent a lot of time today with Rolf and talking to Stuart Witt, who is one of our lawyers, and we were talking about, well, we know we have to come up with some kind of cost. And he helped us to come up with some kind of approximate figure. All right, he talked to some other architect, and he has some kind of programming, put the information in there, and what we have and what we want to have, and come up with a figure of we could do it for less than 10 million. All right, so another thing to keep in mind is if we have to borrow funds, well, of course we do, that we don't have to borrow everything, use everything that we borrow right up front. So if we found out, you borrow X number of dollars and you don't use, you use X minus so many dollars, then you don't have to say that you borrowed that money, right? So, but we have to be able to cover ourselves. Okay, so that's kind of, if we put it out to referendum, we have to put a figure on there that is going to cover everything. Okay, so that was the figure we were talking about today. My notes, because I just remember everything. that figure, I should say, he ran the figures for a pre-K through 4th. Well, that came in a little higher. So it was like 12, no, it was more than 12, it was 13. Yeah. So, and there's a lot of differences. The guy he was talking to, this was done very hastily so that we could have a figure, okay? So it's not refined. So the figure that is less than 10 is for a pre-K through 3. Now, we do have space over here for 4th grade, correct? So if we needed to do that, we can. So just telling you what that would be. Okay, I'm telling the audience that I'm also, this is to the board. Okay, so when we think about this. Something else I didn't say that. Does somebody else want to respond to something?
I would like to respond.
Sure.
First of all, I guess I'm surprised that you are making these type of considerations, arrangements without speaking to any of the rest of the board. To me, that's not something that yet we've discussed as a board remotely. It's, as Stephanie alluded to, it's not been discussed at all actually since the referendum failed. And to me, I find it inappropriate that numbers are being given, details are being given, and arrangements are being made without speaking to the entire board. And you're making those statements publicly, and that to me seems inappropriate.
Well, okay, Walt was there for most of these conversations. He could tell you the same thing. There was so much in these conversations that I don't think it was out of line for me to be there.
We also talked about what the cost of additions would be too.
Yes, we did.
So,
It was a factual thing. It wasn't like, okay, this is the way we're going. What are all of the steps? What are all the options in every plan that there is? And it's mind-boggling. Okay,
See, I admire you so that I do, but I am going to agree with her. Not for the fact that you did this. I'm fine with that. You're the board. You're the president of the president of the board. However, in everything that we've done with all the other options, we've all sat down together and heard the same information. That does bother me because we just got done discussing we have no surprises amongst each other. I'm actually surprised right now. And I'm not upset with you in any way. Please understand that. But it's just, we all usually sit down and hear the same thing.
we are under it. We don't have that
You're not
luxury.
saying that this is a set price, you're just getting us started.
That's correct.
It's just an estimate,
Correct.
so what we know what we're talking about.
It's just that we have information. Yes.
I'm just saying though that
Thank you for your leadership in taking the reins and moving forward and getting the answers that I believe at the last meeting we asked for. We wanted to know what would it be. We sat here and everybody looked over at Chuck when he was sitting there and said, do you know what those numbers would be? We need a number. So did we formally go around and say, oh, can we offer us a number? But we were all there and we said we needed a number. So I think this is...
I'm just saying that, we asked Chuck for numbers and actual figures. I asked for that. I asked him for that. He sat right over there and I'm the one that asked him for that. I asked Chuck, I didn't expect her. That's all I'm saying. I'm not upset in any way. You're doing your job. I'm not.
And what you're asking right now is for us to vote on something, take action on something based on things that we've had no time to consider, and that you're throwing out in the middle of the meeting.
Well, the only thing that we have to consider tonight is whether we're going to put a resolution. We are going to ask for a resolution to be prepared for Monday night. Okay, in that preparation, then there will have to be some figure amount. Okay, and that has to be done between now and then. If you don't allow for that preparation, then it's going to die because this has to be done.
So this is
it.
This is that pre-work that needs to be done. This is the first step to that. We're not voting on $10 million.
No.
No. This is
I'm
that
just, that's
first.
just information, so that,
Yeah.
so everybody knows.
Right.
The question at hand is, do we want to support providing a referendum or not? Whether we do or not, we're not setting prices, we're not even agreeing on grade structure.
Right.
The question at hand is, are we going to approve letting these voters decide? I don't see what's wrong.
I'd like to make a statement to the board. You know, a couple people were on when we put this out. And I mean, of course, when we put that other referendum out there, the land out north of town, all right, we did that as a board, all right? And I asked for people to talk to me, to send emails, to call, which they have done. And I overwhelmingly have heard we didn't like that site. Maybe I voted for it, but I didn't vote for it because of where it was. And I'm thinking, well, you know, did I listen to what people said? Did I hear that? A lot of what we did was a closed session. All right, so people didn't hear it because we're talking about land. Well, okay, so we come out and we put this proposal out there. Well, I can understand where did you get that? And I see that, and I don't think we listen to people. I don't. And so I'm saying personally, I think that was wrong on my part to put that out there because I didn't know. And those who say, well, we're asking referendum after referendum. This is a different referendum. And it's like, yeah, before I said, no, I wouldn't support it, because I like the options, they're okay. They're adequate, as Mr. Scott says. And that's probably not good enough, but they are okay, they're good. But if I were to do what I think is best for kids, I would say, yes, there should be a center in Lincoln for the younger kids. So I'm changing my mind about this. I don't know where everybody else wants to end up.
I think I've been very clear with my stances. I fully support having a new school in Lincoln, provided that it is more than adequate. I completely agree, adequate is not good enough. And at the same token, though, I still think as a board, we have to have a contingency ready to go, period. If the referendum does not pass, ground is broken, regardless of which option it is ready to go. The last referendum, one of the things that was asked over and over and over, I know I personally asked it, was what happens if we don't pass? And the answer was, well, the board will have to meet. And meanwhile, ceiling tiles are falling and more bad stuff is happening, the school's literally falling apart. It's not good enough for the kids. The kids have to get out of that school, period. So there is no more waiting. So either this new school gets built and go in there, or they have to accept one of these other plans. Neither one is going to happen before the end of this school year. So with that in mind, I don't see the harm in trying to run more referendum, let the people vote on it. If it doesn't go through, the people have spoken, the decision is made, it's final. We have an option to go to. If they do vote for a referendum, then that's the option to go to. Either way, I don't see the harm in having another referendum at this point.
Can you think about doing both of these things at the same time? He said, all right, go ahead and apply for these quality bonds, whatever they're called. I call them 2 bonds, the ones that are almost interest-free, and write it up so that it's going to be on your option 6 or whatever option that you choose. All right, at the same time, he wasn't real keen on it, but he said, yeah, you can do it. Go ahead and if you want to do a referendum, you can. So the money that would be on the option actually would not necessarily be available to the referendum. People need to understand that. So, I mean, if you want a new school, it basically comes down that you are going to have to pay for it. And I did hear a lot of people say to me, I am willing to pay for it. No.
We've received many, many emails, and thank everybody for you can't get enough information as far as I'm concerned. So I read each and every one of those emails several times, so I appreciate that very much. There were a couple of folks that still didn't quite grasp some of the concepts. We are not fixing the old school. That is not an option. Okay, there's no Band-Aids put on the elementary school. It's not a matter of, can we just put a few dollars here? No. Taxes will go up regardless, whether one of these options or whether there's a referendum or not. It's just a matter of how much. So understand that. It's not a matter of whether or not your taxes will go up, because they will. It's the difference between the two. We'll make sure is available for everybody to know what that difference is. And that's only fair. We need to know somebody stated exactly where this money goes and what you get for your dollar. No matter what decision is made. Okay, I think that's something that the community is owed. They're the ones paying the money, so we need to be very clear that whether it's one of the options or if it's a referendum, each and every dollar needs to be spent, and you need to be clear where that's going. So.
Well, I struggled with this a lot. Lost a lot of sleep. I couldn't eat, couldn't think. The main problem I had was, as a board member, what was I supposed to do? What was the right thing to do? It was never a question of where my heart was. Of course, I would like to see the children get a new school. But as a board member, we can't vote just on our heart. We got to vote with our head and our conscience. The big question I had, and I know it's going to come up, I know we're going to hear about it. I stood with this board. I spoke this several times to the board and to everybody. I was asked if the last referendum failed, what would happen? And I said we would proceed forward with additions. Obviously, that message did not get out. I've had some people tell me they had no idea. And one of those spokespersons is Ron Moore. And for those who don't know Ron, he doesn't lie. If he didn't get the message, he didn't get the message, which means we failed in delivering our message. I don't want the responsibility to tell you people what your school district is going to look like for probably the next 20 to 30 years. That really needs to be yours. I don't want the responsibility, or I shouldn't dictate what you can and cannot afford. That is your decision. Nobody likes higher taxes, but you folks have to decide that. I'm not going to vote no just because I don't think we can afford the taxes. This is a real fine line. You know, when I add up all the names on the paper, 150 people here, you know, look at like 850 people, that's over half the people that voted. That's the part that really upsets me. At the last election, there were 3,650 some registered voters. 1,500 of them showed up to give an opinion. That's 40%. This silent majority of 60% is making our job very, very difficult. We will steer your ship anywhere you tell us to steer it. But I feel like you're giving us 40% of a rudder that's split in two and divided and can't decide what they want, and you won't give us a roadmap. If that continues, this board will have to make a decision, and we're going to be looking at one of these options that we do not prefer. We do not pretend to tell you it's perfect. We're not. But action has to happen. I'm going to support allowing the voters to make this decision. I do not want to make it for you. But I wish you guys would find out who these other 60% of the people are and get them to wake up. Listen, look, and tell us what they want us to do. And we will do it. That's all I got.
I think it's pretty agreed on one thing. And, yeah, and, you know, if y'all want to leave it up to the voters, that's great. We did that last time, we'll do it. You know, I'm not going to say, I'm to the point where I'm tired of losing sleep. I want what's best for the kids, and I care more about the curriculum than I do about the buildings right now. Okay, that is my thing, but I do care about our community. I love Lakin, okay? I love Lakin. I lived in Clinton for 20 plus years, but I love Lakin, okay? But I am going to be very deliberate in saying what I'm about to say. What Jason just said has to be affirmative action. If you guys push this to vote and it goes and the voters say no, then we do it, because this is ridiculous. And I'm tired of going around and around and reading articles that have happened over 20 years ago with this same issue swirling in the toilet. Okay, I don't want anything bad to happen to anyone in this entire area or this district. But I am going to abstain from the vote tonight because I can't make this vote. I'm going to let you all do it. And it's not because I don't want to do it. It's because in my heart I really can't vote yes. I just can't, because we've already had one referendum. Okay, so I don't want that to aid that I don't care about your opinion. I don't care about your opinion, and I don't care about the teachers.
Then retire.
Then
retire.
You can't stay civil, we're gonna ask you to leave. Thank you. This is a business meeting, and we have to conduct business.
This is not easy on any of us. You guys, I can't tell you what you silenced or not you, what the silent 60% is doing to us. We're fighting amongst ourselves, and we shouldn't be.
we all care about
We all
the
have the
education of
same
these
common
kids.
interest. I've only been on here for 2.5 years, and I just feel like, you know, if we're going to get anything done, we got to do it ourselves. I've never seen a movement like this. It's just so refreshing. It's kind of new ground for us. But please don't be mad, don't be upset if anybody votes yes or no. We all are voting our conscience. We all are doing what we think is right. It is not time to be judgmental.
So I'd like to add something that you said, but I want to address everybody. Again, this is a movement, I appreciate it very much. If a referendum were to go and were to pass, I would hope each and every one of you would continue the support of how that school would look. Right? We're not going to have designs going before a referendum, just like we did last time. And the thought process was to have the community help design what it would do, what is best for the kids, the education, the educators. Okay? I hope, regardless of what decision is made, you continue to support your community and your educational facilities here. Okay? Keep it up. It's the only way your community is going to get stronger. Our community is going to get stronger. Okay? So, please.
You were here on this school with Bill. What is it like?
And I thought you were my friend. The only thing, I agree with Jason in that if we put it out for referendum, you know, everybody needs to know we're going to have 2 plants and one. If it fails, then that next day, we're going with either option 5 or 6, whatever we've considered is the best thing that we can do.
We have your information.
Yeah, and so. And none of us have made these decisions lightly. Yeah. Right?
I would just like to say that I agree with some of the things that have been said. I disagree with others. The one thing that I would say is that we were all elected to this board to equally represent all of the district. I greatly appreciate all of the Lakin people coming out to support this situation, but you continue to say that you haven't heard from the 60%, but the reality is, we've heard time and time again, just as Mr. Riddell spoke, you just heard from them in April of this year, but you won't listen.
They won't vote.
They just voted. They just voted.
1,500 out of 3,668.
But we just voted. The entire district, everyone in this room, if you lived in this district in April of this year, you had an opportunity just like your neighbors. They spoke, just like all of the times before that this referendum has failed, they spoke to you. And the board is allowing instead a smaller group of people to come through the doors, while albeit a good intention, well-intended completely. But you're allowing this group to come through the doors and dictate what the board is doing when we have had the numbers in front of us. We've been told at the election, it was our duty as we were elected for this board to do what the election told us to do. At that time, I was on the board before the election. I went through all of this referendum, this previous referendum. When we were on this board, it was our duty, when that was done, to take those answers that they gave us and move forward. They said, no, we don't want our taxes to increase for this new building. Now is the time to do something different. They said no building, period. We had options before. We've discussed other things in the past, but we aren't listening. This board, if you look at the history, and I'm sorry if some people feel as if they were not appropriately educated on the things that were going on with the district and the referendums and those things.